Welcome into the Rankings show here on ProBox TV, where you get your long-form content along with your bite-sized news. And for those who love their breakdowns in audio form, that's right, we're now available as a podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, listen to us 24/7 for your boxing news. Get the ProBox TV app now. So, right now on the Ranking Show, 154 pounds, red hot right now in boxing. So what we did is we all, behind the scenes, sent in our top fives, and J-Rod, whose math is a little suspect, compiled it all together into a top five that we will now discuss. In studio with me, Jimmy Smith, Chris Algieri, joining us via Zoom, of course, the champ, Paulie Malignaggi. We're going to discuss the top five, and at number 5, this is a guy who could be number 2, number 1. I was honestly a little surprised to see him at number 5, but that was his average. Israel Madrimov. Chris, he could have been number 2. He came within a round to be a number 1.
He was my number 2. Yeah. And I think I was talking him up even before the Crawford fight and said this is a very real fight. It's going to be a difficult fight for Crawford. And then he went out there and actually even impressed me. He was better than I even expected. And I think also the fact that he has now spent 12 rounds with a pound-for-pound great like Terence Crawford, he's going to be that much better. Activity, fighting tip-top guys, and having the skill set and the amateur background that he's already had. I mean, this guy has a lot going for him. I'm really surprised to see him at number 5 myself.
Yeah, I think I put him higher than number 5. I don't remember exactly where I put him, higher than number 5. Paulie, are you a little surprised he's at the bottom of the top 5? And is it scary that he's that good with so few fights?
Yeah, I'm surprised as well. I think I had him at 2, maybe 3. I may have had him at 3. Either way, if I have him at 5, it's definitely on us. That's for sure. I mean, I know our polls have a lot of writers in there. And you know what I always think about the boxing media? So yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if it was among us voting that he's a 5, but since there's other people in this panel that voted, can't say I'm shocked.
Yeah, but this idea that, one of the criticisms or one of the things we were wondering about coming into the Terence Crawford fight was, how is he going to do big lights? He doesn't have the experience, all these things. He looked so good under very difficult circumstances. Chris, should that be factored into how good he is?
Absolutely, because he had a very specific game plan that night, and he executed throughout. Under the lights, just like you said, against the best opponent he could possibly face, and it was his first time stepping up to that level. Also, he'd never been 12 rounds before. How crazy is that? Guy had never been 12 rounds before, goes in with Terence Crawford pound for pound, great, all-timer, and then has the game plan, executes, ran out of gas a little bit towards the end, but I thought he put up a fantastic effort. It was a very, very close fight against an amazing fighter.
Against the GOAT, right, Paul?
Champ, considering it was his first 12-rounder, that's amazing. Yeah, you know what? I hadn't really thought of that either. You go your first 12-rounder against the pound-for-pound best, and hey, welcome to the 12-round club. You're not even working your way into things, man. But that's the thing about these Eastern European fighters. They have so many amateur fights. I mean, when we talk about not the pressure, not the big lights and stuff like that. Yeah, maybe not the big lights, but there's a lot of pressure when you fight at World Amateur Championships and European Games and Olympic Games and what a lot of the places where a lot of these guys with these huge amateur careers have been to. There's a lot of pressure, you're dealing with at a tournament like that. So, you learn how to handle pressure at a young age when you're raised like these kind of guys. And then the boxing culture in general is very, very emotionless when you're in there, and you see a lot of the Eastern European fighters have that as well. I think Madrimov is Uzbek, right? Is he Uzbek, guys?
I believe so, yeah. So that
yeah,
flag,
I believe Uzbek. And if you look at Uzbek in the recent Olympic Games, Uzbekistan had 5 medals. I think 5 gold medals, actually.
Yeah.
I think 5. Wow. So again, it's what I've said about Eastern Europeans. They may not get the fame and accolades as pros because they turn pro and they don't have a following and they just go right into the world-class level, so they don't get to build up their following on the way up. But dude, either you're going to be an Instagram star or you're going to be the best in the world. I don't know that it's always feasible that goes hand in hand because you got to dedicate yourself so much to being a top fighter. But you know what? Luckily, in today's Instagram world, you can fake it till you make it, and then you can fake like you're the best, and as long as you have a big following, everybody will think you're the best.
You're going to get the dollars for sure, but I got a question for Chris Algieri. I know the answer for you, Paulie. You a soccer fan?
Yeah, of course.
All right, so ties are okay with you.
Ties?
It's weird because we got a tie at number 4. That's right. Tim Zhu, Sebastian Fundora tied at number 4. Totally okay with you. It's all right with you.
We use draws in this sport, but yeah, okay. Tie.
Who's not a soccer fan? Jimmy. But what do you think of these two guys who fought? Controversial finish, of course, an elbow leading to a win for Fundora, but Tim Tszyu dealing with a cut. Paul, you've been very critical of this. There's a little controversy with these guys being kind of attached at the hip at number 4.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it where you're coming from because obviously they had such a close fight, such a controversial fight. But without that fight, Fundora is not in the top 5. You know, without that performance, without that night, without that cut, he's not
needed some help, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So Tim Tszyu was looking very good that night before the cut happened. Was landing right hands at will, and then he got cut. And the amount of blood that was pouring into his eye, I can't believe that he was able to go through the rest of that fight. I mean, essentially blind, bleeding into both eyes. That cut was one of the worst I had ever seen. That's the most blood I've ever seen in any fight. Because on top of the cut, which is caused by an accidental elbow, Fundora's nose was, look at the picture, was shattered and bleeding all over the place from pretty much the first round on. So, I mean, both guys were bleeding profusely. So I think you're going to tie them together because of that. Obviously, again, the fight was very, very close and controversial. But Tim Tszyu, he was my number 4. I had him here mostly because of we don't know where he's falling now because of the cut. He had to pull out of the Virgil Ortiz fight over this past month. But now we've actually heard that he has a fight coming up. So that's good that he's back. But regardless, having these two tied, I don't like the way it feels.
Well, Paul, I got to ask you, when we discuss raw talent, right, not necessarily experience or technique, when it comes to raw talent, Tim Tszyu is at the top of this list to a lot of people. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I had him as the best guy prior to that Fundora fight. I thought he was going to become the best fighter that there is, you know, in the weight class. You know, I thought he was eventually going to grow to dominate that weight class, you know, but it's turned into sort of a fiasco because of that cut, you know. I mean, again, this is why ringside doctors and ringside physicians and ringside in general, and just people looking for commissions have to be qualified. You know, this turns everything into a topsy-turvy for the guy. I felt like he would, despite how competitive 154 pounds is, I thought he was going to be the best guy. When the dust settled, I thought he was going to be the best guy. I still think that potential is there, but now he's sort of working from backwards, you know, from the back of the line. You know what I mean? You know, you talk about it, and we talk about football or soccer. Let's talk about auto racing as well. You work yourself in pole position. Tim Tszyu now is not in the pole position. I think he can still, you know, get to the very top of the weight class and end up becoming the best of these guys. But he's not in pole position right now, so he's going to have to have some coming back to do after that fight.
Well, you know, there's actually one thing that we've been failing to mention, and it's kind of got lost in the shuffle. It's the idea that Tim Tszyu was actually supposed to fight Keith Thurman that night, not Fundora, who's 6'7". He was supposed to fight at 5'8". Keith Thurman takes that fight on very short notice, and a right-hander. Yeah. Thank you. So he really got bit on the backside because, you know, he was being a fighter, being a man about it, and saying, yeah, I'm fighting. This is my main event. This is my card. I came to America for this reason. Yeah, my opponent fell out because I think Keith Thurman actually injured his bicep, pulled out a fight, which is a serious injury. Fundora decides to step in. He was fighting on the undercard against Bohachuk, who now we know all about. And Tszyu said, "Yep, I'll take it." So he goes from a 5'8" right-hander to a 6'6" southpaw. Then gets cut, keeps fighting. I mean, Tszyu did everything right from a man's perspective, from a champion's perspective, and for that, he got a loss.
Yes.
And now he's tied with Fundora at 4.
And it's crazy because looking at what we've seen from Fundora and Bohachuk would have probably knocked him out.
Yeah, so, I would agree.
So it's crazy, you know, like the way the fortunes turned. And you had the crazy fortunes, the crazy and again, it's not a disrespect to Fundora. I think he's a good fighter. This is a very good weight class. You know?
Weight class is super deep.
And he's just not apt at the very top of this. I don't see him lasting long with these guys. And you know what? If he proves me wrong, I'll eat crow. But I just, you know, because there's nothing I have personally against him. I just don't see it. You know, despite, you know, seeing him as a relatively solid fighter. But you know, you have these kind of topsy-turvy situations. Champ, you just said it, with Thurman coming out of the fight, Fundora stepping in. But you still got, if you don't have a mutt for a ringside doctor in that fight, you still don't have any of this mess. You still needed the mutt you still needed the mutt in the corner to be the ringside doctor. And that's a shame considering all the great ringside doctors Vegas has had in the past with Dr. Richard Istrico, right, Dr. Margaret Goodman, all these great doctors they've had. They found some mutt to be the ringside doctor for that night.
Well, and guys, just for the record, here on ProBox TV, we are not afraid to eat crow if we are wrong. If we say that your favorite fighter is not going to win, and then they do.
We even ate crow Well, we should have.
Yeah, you're right. We jumped the gun on Ian Crow.
Well, you brought it up, Paulie, so let's go there at number 3, coming off a loss as well. Serhiy Bohachuk, of course, against Virgil Ortiz, a fight very, very close, able to knock Ortiz down twice, and yet still didn't get a decision. 2 cards had him down by 1 point, 114, 113 on 2 cards. Doesn't get any closer than that, but, you know, we talk about with the Madrimov fight, sometimes you're elevated with a loss. Is this one of those cases? You always want to win, but he opened a lot of eyes with that Virgil Ortiz.
Yes, I don't think he's elevated in terms of his skill set. I think we just have become aware of it. He is that good. You know, another thing you got to look at is, Champ, you mentioned Fundora, and you don't think that he'd be able to even last with Bohachuk. So Fundora was knocked out by Brian Mendoza. Bohachuk dominated him. Had his face swollen and bleeding all over the place. Brian Mendoza's tough. He's never really been dominated before until he met this man right here, Serhiy Bohachuk. And Bohachuk gave Ortiz all he could handle. Many people thought that Bohachuk should have got the decision that night. It was a very, very close fight either way. But no, he showed his class and his skill and his power. He is a two-fisted destroyer with heavy hands. He's big for the weight class. This guy is dangerous. If he's not in your top 5, I don't even know what you're watching.
Is it one of those things, Paulie, where there are certain guys in combat sports, whatever your combat sport is, there are guys who will beat you, and then there are guys who will beat you up, right? There are wrestlers who will tech you. Other guys will beat you up so bad you never want to step on the mat again with those guys. Is Bohachuk kind of that guy? Is he kind of the boogeyman in terms of, God, he's just hard-nosed, comes at you, throws heavy punches. It takes a toll whether you win or lose. Is he that guy?
Yeah, he sort of keeps you constantly working. He stays in your face. He's got heavy hands. What's the wrestling version of that? Was that like Iowa? The Brand Brothers style, where they just beat you up so bad you never understand. Yeah, constant in your face, beating you up, running you down, draining you mentally and physically. That's sort of Bohachuk's style, and it's entertaining for fans to watch. Also, if you got a guy on his level, so Virgil Ortiz, it creates an amazing fight because he's going to stay in your face. You got a guy on his level that can hang on while he's in his face, and you get a great fight. You know, it's why you love top fighters fighting each other and why you hate when top fighters don't fight each other, because then you get guys like this. If they're overmatching guys constantly, it's not fun to watch. But let's say if fight guys on their level, man, they're fun to watch. And this weight class is fun, and Serhiy Bohachuk's one of the more fun fighters in the weight class.
When you need to be disciplined, you need to maybe come back. You need to follow the game plan the entire time, which you guys talk about all the time on the desk. Virgil Ortiz against Bohachuk, his last time out, did that knockdown twice, but you never got the sense that he was mentally out of it, that he didn't believe he was going to win. Kudos to him in a very close fight.
Oh, absolutely. Virgil Ortiz, I mean, in terms of, getting dropped, going down, he got right up hungry, and came right back. And Bohachuk stayed there tooth and nail. And then really it was the last couple rounds where, for me, Virgil was able to show his class and kind of separate himself. And that's why I slightly edged Virgil Ortiz in that fight.
Number 2 on our list, of course, is Virgil Ortiz coming off the Bohachuk win. When you look at it, Paulie, what did you not expect? You thought Bohachuk won the fight, but did Virgil Ortiz...
I'm sorry. To draw.
I'm sorry, you had to draw, but you thought it was a controversial win. I'm sorry for Virgil Ortiz. But what do you think of his skill set? What do you think of how he approached the fight? Like I said, he mentally kept in a fight where he was down twice. What did you think of Ortiz after the fight was over, regardless of the scorecards?
Yeah, and the reason I had a problem with the scorecard is because in a close fight like that, Bohachuk came in as an interim champion. You're not supposed to let the champion lose his title like that, But either way, it was a great performance by both guys. I'll tell you what impressed me about Ortiz, because both guys really impressed me on this night. Ortiz, first of all, going down twice and making like nothing happened. You're shaking it off completely and actually, coming on strong in spots after being knocked down. Not losing his head. He got knocked down in round 1. I know they didn't count it until round 4, but he still got knocked down in round 1, and he didn't really lose his head. He didn't get flustered. You get knocked down, you still felt it. Even if it's a flash knockdown, you felt the shot. So this guy can punch. Also, even if they didn't count it until 3 rounds later, he kept his head about him, kept his wits about him. Another thing I liked, he made some adjustments, or at least attempted to make some adjustments. Sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. Bohachuk's an in-your-face guy. He's going to come at you tomorrow. He's going to live and die by the sword, Bohachuk. He's going to just try to break you, grind you constantly. Ortiz is the kind of guy who's been known to do that as well. So you were wondering, okay, this is like a rock and a hard place. It's what is it? Immovable object which stops against the unstoppable force, or whatever, however that shit goes. So you were like, okay, which one of these guys is going to get the upper hand in that? Well, it wasn't necessarily that anybody got the upper hand. Okay, Bohachuk decided he wasn't going to be moved off of his perch as far as I'm going to be the pressure guy and I'm going to be the physical guy. But Ortiz, I don't know if he got so much moved off of it as he decided to adjust, and he made some adjustments and started blading his stance a little bit off his shoulder and using that jab. and just trying different things. And like I said, sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't, but he showed a mind of an adjustment as well, and I like that as well. He's thinking in there. So because remember, this is a guy who hadn't been a lot of rounds in the last couple of years. He's been highly touted, but hadn't really been tested. And all of a sudden, he's going 12 in a total sink or swim fight, and the fight is living up to his expectation. It really was sink or swim. So regardless of how he had it, and like I said, I had it a draw. Regardless of that, both guys impressed me for the reason that they both lived for the moment, showed up for the moment, showed up in the moment, and show that they belong at that level, and that they'll be back at this level. I can't. This is one of those. These guys are one of the reasons why this weight class is so fun.
And Champ, this is another guy similar to Madrimov, who it's his first time going 12 rounds. Because Virgil Ortiz had a 100% knockout percentage rating. He has never gone the distance. This is his first time going 12 rounds. And unlike Madrimov, Ortiz is the guy who finished strong. He won 11 and 12. He was pushing the pace. Like you said, he showed different facets to his style. He's used to blowing guys out at 47. The welterweights were just not strong enough to keep him off of them. But at 54, he had to show different wrinkles. He had a guy in Bohocek, as you called the immovable object. He had to box a little bit. He had to get behind that jab. He had to get on his toes. He had to circle. He had to throw more combinations, really touching, scoring. I really liked the body work, which I think went underviewed by a lot of people. His little stab shots in the middle. His jab was excellent. And then also, exactly like you said, his ability to come back from the knockdowns. First knockdown, if I'm watching, I go, are we just not scoring knockdowns now? What's going on? Yeah. Thank God I came back on replay four rounds later that it was called that. But if you notice, the way that Ortiz acted after the second knockdown, he got up mad, and he came at Bohocek. If you watched it again, Bohocek actually backed up immediately. Bohocek sent the whole rest of the round on his back foot. That makes me think that from their sparring, Bohocek knew, if I hit this guy, if I crack this guy, he's coming. Because he was ready for it. He was like, all right, boom, here it comes. And, I thought Virgil actually won that round that he got dropped the second time. And it was a 9-9 round on my scorecard. That just shows you the mindset of Virgil Ortiz.
This is an argument for a different show. It's not 9-9. It's either 10-8 or 10-9. There's no 9-9 for the knockdown. The only reason it's 9-9 is when your points get taken away. I know there's a lot of confusion there. Look it up, guys. Trust me.
That's true.
It's a different conversation for a different show. The only time there's 9-9 is if a penalty is given.
A point's deducted,
Yeah. But if you don't think a guy deserved the 10-8 round, even if he got the knockdown, it still
becomes
10-9.
10-9, yeah, that's right.
Just 10-9.
Paulie hitting us with the education.
Guys at home, you guys can look up the rule because I know there's a lot of confusion with that, even among message boards and all that stuff.
Yeah, there is. I just screwed it up myself. Yes, 10-9 if he doesn't get a point deducted. But people listening to this, right, now that we are in podcast form, a lot of people listening, or if you're watching the ProBox TV app, what are you looking at? You're looking at who is number one and what are the chances that number two fights number one. You know about Virgil Ortiz winning against Bohocek in a must-win fight, but who's to take on our number one? Terence Crawford, who I don't think was below number one for anybody's poll behind the scenes. He's done the least at 154 pounds, but he is right now the GOAT in boxing. He's on everyone's pound-for-pound list in the top three. What are your thoughts on him at 154? What do you say about it, Chris? What is there to say?
It's obvious. It's Terence Crawford, guys. We wanted to see how he was.
Roll credits. Roll credits.
I mean, it's not really. We talk about this guy all the time. You see it yourself, but he was pushed. Yes. It was a very close fight. Madrimov was able to land cleaner shots than we've seen Terence Crawford maybe ever get hit throughout the night. He was forced to go the distance, snapping, I believe, an 11-fight knockout streak. First time going the distance in 11 fights. He fought a bigger guy, moving up 54s in his fourth weight class now. Was definitely pushed. But also, Madrimov, not just the bigger man. Wasn't just because it was a size thing. The guy was good. He fought a very smart fight, herky-jerky, tricky, had a game plan, was very difficult to hit, very elusive. Another thing about that is Crawford had one of the lowest landing percentages of his career against Madrimov. He was very difficult to find. Madrimov took a lot of analysis and data collecting until he really came on toward the end of the fight. But that's the thing about Terence Crawford. It's the supercomputer that's up here. His ability to analyze data, collect information, and fire upon it and act on it and pull that trigger is second to none in the world, which is why he's the pound-for-pound king.
Watching him get pushed, as Chris said, Paulie, at 154 pounds, what does that make you think about his future in a top five that is really, really stacked?
Yeah, I'm going to start responding by mentioning that Crawford is my number one pound for pound, and he's also my number one in this weight class. Yeah. Now that I'm done with the what is it called? The praising.
Particulars.
Yeah.
Particulars and the praising.
The positives first.
Let me be flat out over here, okay, guys? With the exception of Fundora, any of these guys can beat each other on any given night. Okay. I also had calls, just like I had calls from Europe about Bohocek claiming that Bohocek was robbed. I also got calls with Madrimov and Crawford saying, "Oh, the guys from Europe were saying, no way, Crawford didn't win that fight. No way. Madrimov is also the champion. So and so and so." I thought Crawford edged it out. I had Bohocek and Ortiz a draw. Okay. Either way, the fights are very close, very competitive. Crawford, because this weight class is also not his natural weight class. He's super, super skilled, and he belongs here at the top. And I have him at number one because he still got that decision, and I also felt like he actually did win that decision, unlike Ortiz, where I thought it was a draw. But you also see that these guys are so good from 1 to 5. Again, with the exception of Fundora, because I think Fundora can't beat any of these guys. That was just and again, it's not a knock on him. He's fun. He's gonna, but I don't think he beats these top guys. With the exception of Fundora, any of these guys can beat each other. Matter of fact, you can make Ortiz and Bohocek again, and Bohocek might get the decision this time. He might win. You can make Madrimov and Crawford again. Who knows? Crawford, Madrimov going the 12 rounds for the first time. Champ, that was a great point you made. Now he's got that 12-round experience with Crawford. Maybe he beats him. Just because we got 1 versus 2 here, this isn't one of those 1 versus 2 where they separated from the rest. I actually don't want to see 1 versus 2. I actually want to see Ortiz and Bohocek fight again. I think that's a better fight than Ortiz against Crawford. I want to see Ortiz, and I think Bohocek also deserves that rematch. Okay, I think Crawford, you can probably match with Fundora just for the elementary part of it, and say, you know what, get him those belts, as he is the man. I do feel he is the man at the weight class. And since Fundora has the 2 belts, and Fundora and won't beat Crawford, so you eliminate Fundora, who like I said, for me, not a knock on him personally. I think he's a great guy, and he's a fun fighter. I just don't think he belongs here. So you eliminate him, take the belts where they belong, which is to the top guy in Crawford. And in the meantime, Zhu starts fighting. What's he fighting? Murtazayev or whatever the guy's name is.
Murtazayev, yeah.
Probably grabs the IBF title. You start to maneuver things a little bit. And this way you can get these guys in with the proper matchups here. I don't necessarily think you need 1 versus 2. As a matter of fact, I don't want to see 1 versus 2 if this is our rankings, because I don't want to see Crawford versus Ortiz. I want to see Ortiz against Bohocek again. I think that's the fight I want to watch.
I'm being petty now. Not petty, but personal. I want Zhu and Ortiz. We were promised that fight.
Out on that one,
and it's just like it whet my appetite for that fight. I want that fight so bad.
And I think in time, all of these fights do happen, unless these guys burn each other out. Because let's face it, bro, the fights they were having, I mean, a lot of fights like Ortiz and Bohocek, and you're not going to last long in general, whether you win or lose those kind of fights, right? But I do think that we can end up seeing a lot of these guys in with each other all at once. Because I don't think that there's too much star power here. I know Ortiz has been heavily followed, and he's obviously living up to it. He's a great fighter. Crawford is the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter, but again, he's a little older. He's not going to stay too much longer, so I think he's only looking for top fights. I think this could be a real fun weight class, guys. I think this thing can turn around. And like I said, I feel like Zhu has the potential to be the best guy. I still feel like he is going to be the best guy out of all these. But man, dude, can you really say it and just be willing to bet your house on it? No, absolutely not. It's that kind of weight class.
Well, you brought it up, Paulie. Murtazayev, we didn't even mention him. He's a champ. IBF champ. When you look at the champs that we have in this division, this is a guy who isn't even our top 5.
For how long?
When Murtazayev, we haven't seen enough of him as well. A lot of people aren't familiar with him, and we know how good Zhu is, bro. You know what I mean? Zhu was, again, for me, Zhu probably could be the best in this weight class. It could be him and Crawford right there. And it was supposed to be him and Crawford. He just supposed to be Fundora, and that was really the talk. Was going to be maybe it's Crawford versus Zhu. So it's not really a knock on Murtazayev either, just like it's not a knock on Fundora. It's funny because both of them have belts. It's just this weight class is very, very deep. And you know what? Even if you're not in the top 5, but you're still good, should be happy, man. I remember I was in the welterweight division, and it was like stacked with talent, and I was the WBA welterweight champion, and people were getting pushed ahead of me. I mean, I was kind of pissed, but in the rankings, but I was like, whatever, bro. I'm in the mix. I got a belt in this great weight class where there's a lot of money to be made, So either way, I think these guys, they're gonna have a chance to prove it too. Speaking Murtazayev and Fundora.
All right, well, then let's talk about the best of the rest, in a sense. Murtazayev, IBF champion. We also have Errol Spence Jr., perhaps going into the weight class. You have Charles Conwell. You have Jamel Charlo. Best of the rest. Chris, who are you looking at?
Well, it's really, I mean, listen, Errol Spence is a monster. He used to be the big fish at 140, nickname.
And it's got the name.
He was collecting the heads of champions and all their belts, throughout the welterweight division for a number of years. Put a beating on some really, really good fighters. And but he got beat so badly by Terence Crawford last year. He's got the multiple car accidents under his belt as well, the detached retina. So you have all these health effects, these ill health effects. How much of Errol the Truth Spence is left? That is the big question. We're not going to know until fight night. We're not going to know until he steps back in the ring, which, again, we don't know when that's going to be either. But he is the kind of guy who always says, I don't take tune-ups, big fights only. So he will come right out of a semi-retirement or a year off and go right into a big fight because that's just the kind of guy he is. So he is definitely a player, but we just don't know how big of a player. That's why he's not mentioned in our group here.
But I get what he thinks of himself. Is he wanted in a big fight, especially in a weight class that has so many good fighters? Do you really want to see one of them waste their time on Spence now? I mean, yeah, I get it. You know, okay, yeah, you don't take tune-ups.
The money's there, Paulie.
Marketing's not going to be wasting their time on Errol Spence. It's putting Errol Spence's name on their record. If you can get a guy like Zoo to blast out Errol Spence, that's a really good look for Zoo.
It's kind of a shame, though. Do you think? I mean, I get it. But, you know what? You're right. Everybody wants those kind of names on their resume, but it's kind of a shame to, because he was such a great champion. That's what it comes down to. Not because you don't want to take tune-ups. Now you're just going to become a resume filler for champion.
Dude, this is what happens to all of us, man. The fighters become fodder for the next. It's unfortunate. Yeah. It's a dog-eat-dog system, but come on. I mean, this is boxing, man. It's ruthless.
When you look at all this talent at 154 pounds, a name that gets dropped out 20-0, 15 knockouts, Charles Conwell, KO Saturday on the Ortiz card. What you thought on his future? Just getting started?
He's actually a pretty talented guy. I mean, listen, he's light years away from the guys we're talking about now in terms of status, but he's solid and he's good. And the only way you can know if you're on that level is get to the level. So let's give him a shot. Throw him in the mix. He's undefeated. He's got a really good record. He's a fun style. He's an aggressive guy. He's got a good punch. He seems like he's durable. I don't see why not. You can't mix him in with this group. Everyone we're talking about is super elite. We haven't seen Charles at that level. Give him a shot.
Charlo with the time off, Paulie, what's your thought? Because it's almost the polar opposite to Conwell, who is 20-0, we really don't know, hasn't fought a lot of names. A lot of people, Charlo might be physically spent, might be at the back nine of his career. What's your thought on him in this mix?
I don't have any thoughts on Charlo. I want to talk about Charles Conwell. Let's move on to the people that matter.
Please, go ahead, Paulie.
Cholo doesn't matter. I don't think Cholo himself wants to fight again. He had his time. I think he just looked terrible in the Canelo fights. And what are you going to come back to 154 and tell us you're hungry? There's no way he's hungry. And in a weight class full of hungry vultures, I just don't think he blends in very well. And I think it'd be a waste of time. If I think Errol Spence is going to be a waste of time at 154, imagine you're going to think of Cholo. The Charles Conwell is actually a former, I think, Olympic alternate. I don't think he's the youngest guy, so you got to start putting him in as well. I think he was an Olympic alternate for the 16 games, actually. So I don't think he's actually like a spring chicken. He's got to be around 30 years old, to give or take, right? I mean, you guys can look it up, but he's got to be, give or take, around 30 years old. So he's got to get his own shot as well. Very, very capable, very, very good fighter. I just think he's been with a sort of a B promoter. So that's why his name doesn't come up into the mix as often as it should, because that's the problem with B promoters. They don't like to actually promote, So I think he's a solid fighter. I think he deserves his shot. And in a weight class that has so much depth, I think giving a guy a shot like this would make him more fun. Because, again, the guys on the outside, like Conwell, like Fundora, like Mazataliev, they're still solid fighters. And they could still belong in there. And it's not like, again, like I'm talking about with Spencer Charlo, where I'm like, wow, dude, why I want to see shot fighters fight these guys? But none of these guys are shot. They're just outside the top five. But they're certainly good enough in a weight class that's, dude, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking this has got to be the most fun weight class in boxing right now.
It's the best.
I know it's like the thing to say, like, oh, 140 is real fun. And then no, dude, 154 is deep, man.
This and 175 are my two favorite. 175 and 154 are my two favorite. 135 is also in there too. But yeah, this is fastly becoming the most interesting. I would say the most interesting weight class in the world.
I
today.
think we might do that one next. We'll check it out. 175 pounds next on the rankings show. But by the way, before we go, Charles Conwell, 26 years old, so he has some years to get to the top. Hope you've enjoyed. Go ahead.
I mean, he was your alternate at like 18 years old. The kid is talented.
He was a young kid.
You gotta give him a shot.
Young kid in the Olympics. Anyway, kids, also now let you know, of course, you can get us in audio form wherever you get your podcast, get your boxing knowledge while you're driving. Get it wherever you can, and we'll be back after the fights, as always.
Wednesday Night Fights.
Dynamite action on Wednesday Night Fights every other Wednesday on your boxing channel.
Coming up on your next Wednesday Night Fights, August 21st. Former Unified World Champion Swift Jarrett Hurd takes on former Unified World Champion Jason Banana Rosario. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at proboxtv.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday Night Fights.
For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel.